Hello and welcome to Darker Days Radio, episode number 33. I'm, of course, Mike, and tonight I'm joined by Chris. Chris, how are you?
Hello.
I know it's pretty late over there, and you've been intravenously injecting caffeine all day.
Caffeine, and I've gone through Turkish tea, apple tea, and I'm now on another form of tea. So caffeine in all its wonderful varieties. Yeah. I'm good.
Cool. And today we're also joined by a special guest from over at wadnews.net, Peter, also known as Harlequin. What's going on, Peter?
Hello, gentlemen. Chris, Mike,
Hello.
welcome. Happy New Year as well.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Great. So, Peter, could you kind of just tell us how wadnews.net has grown in the past 8 months since we've had you on the show?
It's been that long, really?
Yeah.
Wow. That's actually surprising. It seems like we just had our interview and we were just at PAX like a month or two ago, doesn't it? The time just flew by.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's I'm really been amazed and very content with how the site's been going. When I rebooted this site almost a year ago, for the first few months, I was getting probably a couple thousand unique IP hits, and now the last the most recent stats that I've seen compiled, we're averaging around 10,000 unique IP hits a month and several 100,000 page views. So the site's really taken off, getting new users almost on a daily basis, registered users. So we've really done quite well. I'm very happy with that.
Yeah, definitely. And you guys have, on your forums, you got a small forum game of Vampire going, and just a lot of activity and discussion, which is great, and some really cool blog articles. I saw your one about the top 10 computer RPGs of all time, and I gotta say, Peter, Planescape Torment is way better than Icewind Dale. I've played both of them, and Icewind Dale is hardly even an RPG.
You know, I've taken heat for that. I really have taken heat for that. But this is my logic. It's a little easier to explain verbally than the written word. Deal is Planescape. Awesome. I give it accolades. I give it credit. I think it is an amazingly written story. But that's the thing. It's essentially a computerized novel disguised as a computer role-playing game. Extremely linear. There's really no choice. But the characters, the dialogue, the story, really amazing, very gripping, very powerful. So to me, Planescape is a computer novel, an excellently written and executed computer novel, but more of a computer novel than, in my opinion, a role-playing game, a computer role-playing game in this format, where when I think of a role-playing game, I think of not only a game that I can take a position in, take a character in, but a game that there's some choices and consequence, and it's an open world to some level, and I can explore a bit, and there's these kind of elements. And in this case, it really isn't. It's a very linear game that doesn't really have much choice or consequence. And so that was my decision to give it an honorable mention rather than put it on the top 10 list. Now, as for Icewind Dale, and I've taken a lot of heat for this, I'm going to say I think Icewind Dale transcended its initial goals, and that's the reason I put it on there. Because originally it was supposed to be just a very simple hack and slash D&D dungeon crawl. And that's really what it was supposed to be. It was a very quickly pumped out Infinity Engine dungeon crawl. However, I thought the story, I thought the characters, I thought the voice acting, it really transcended that. And it in the end, is it still a dungeon crawl? Yes, but it is an extremely well dungeon crawl. And I'll tell you, when playing through it, I really felt like I was playing one of those old Redbox D&D modules. You know, it was a very well thought out, very interesting story with some interesting characters, interesting NPCs. As I said, some very well done voice acting. Now, is the story should it win any Oscars? No, but I really felt that the bar that it was set at to be, it exceeded in spades, and that's why I put it on the list.
All right. That's good reasoning, and I accept your chart.
I'm just looking at the list. I'm kind of glad to see that Mass Effect didn't make it. I have real issues with Mass Effect because it bores the crap out of me as a game. Because one of my issues with RPG type console or PC RPG games are those that set your character up to be something. So in the case of Mass Effect, this kind of secret agent, kind of galaxy trotting, gun-toting special ops guy, yet they set you off on doing what are essentially messenger jobs and doing small favors. So I'm glad that didn't make it on your top 10.
My big beef with it was that just like it wasn't very fun. Like there was all these side missions that were all the same, just like go to the planet, find the base, shoot the guys in it.
Oh yeah,
I mean
yeah.
the core story was pretty interesting, but yeah, it was pretty tedious, I'd say.
I kind of like the kind of scouting systems and kind of doing all that. It felt fun in that sense that you could feel like you were discovering things, but then when you went down onto the planets, all it was shoot up the pirates, and it's kind of like I think Mass Effect, and I think I've been talking to David Hill on Google Plus about this. I mentioned that it maybe has a better kind of blueprint to make a very good kind of like Star Trek game, where you can't go about shooting people because you're the goddamn Federation. That's not what you do. Whereas Mass Effect tells you, oh, you're a special ops guy, and yet you can't just, the guy that should be giving you information is going, oh well, I need you to go deliver this. It's like, no, I'm going to pull the gun on you, but I don't have the option to do that. Yeah.
Seems to me that BioWare games are, again, this might go back to my stance where really BioWare is a shell of its former self. It seems as time progresses, their quote unquote CRPGs are becoming more and more bland and less and less innovation and less and less dynamic and less consequence and action and so on and so forth. It seems like that it's becoming just a process now. And this have to do with EA essentially pulling the strings at this point.
Because, I mean, one BioWare game which I have fond memories of is, of course, Knights of the Old Republic, which there were consequences throughout that for what you were doing, but it felt right, and it set up your character, and you felt like you were playing your character as you should, rather than being told you're meant to do things, but then removing those choices from you and not really playing up to the expectations of it. So, yeah, I have issues with BioWare then.
Well, I wrote a blog about a year or so ago now, and I just said, essentially, I made the comparison of BioWare and, ironically speaking, of Star Trek, the Star Trek board, where I looked at EA as the collective, and I said basically BioWare's been assimilated, and you can like it or not, you can throw rotten vegetables at me for saying it, just saying it out loud. But the bottom line is, that is the reality of the situation. They are never going to make another Baldur's Gate or another Star Wars Old Republic. We are never, ever going to see an in-depth, detailed, story like that, computer role-playing game ever from BioWare like that again. It's very sad. It's very unfortunate, but that's just the way it is. And again, I've taken a lot of heat for that stance, but now a year later, people are actually starting to see the realization of that situation.
Oh man, I just beat Baldur's Gate 2 days ago. Yeah, it was awesome. Anyway, that was one hell of an introduction, Peter. You've definitely established your street cred once again. And with that, let's move on over to the mailbag segment. We got one email this week or last couple weeks from Kevin, and he gave us this nice little write up about how to use the Lost from Changeling the Lost with other supernatural splats, and he was basically recommending to us that we look into not exactly crossovers, but combining these different supernatural types, how they can interact in a segment in a future show, and that's great. Maybe we'll look into doing that as a Darkling, or maybe a full segment in the future.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to do with that. I mean, I've messed around with that to some extent in like Vampire and also in Changeling. So I've had like in my Changeling Chronicle I had a Quashelim from Promethean turn up, and had obviously a Promethean in the game. So that's one of the nice things about New World of Darkness, is that you can so easily slot in something from one of the other splats to be either an antagonist or protagonist or some ambiguous kind of character to add mystery into the game. I think there's a lot of lessons that can be learned from that can be applied to running old World of Darkness games, so it's definitely worth looking at and discussing what you can do.
All right, that's it for the mailbag, and let's move on over to White Wolf News. All right, so there's one thing that's not in the show notes here that I was kind of debating, like whether or not I should mention. So White Wolf, like just 2 days ago, released Penny Dreadful as a PDF on DriveThruRPG. This is originally back in like 2004. It was a serialized novel on the White Wolf website, and they released it for free. And if you just use the Wayback Machine, you can download the PDFs, and they're also on the author's website. Author is Kevin A. Murphy, but White Wolf is charging $5 for the PDF on DriveThruRPG. So I sent him a tweet. Maybe I should send him an email, just being like, "Hey, what's the deal, guys?" So I really want to give people a heads up about that. I think it's just a simple mistake, honestly. They probably thought it's gone, and why don't we just throw it up on DriveThru?
Can you get it on demand through DriveThru then?
No.
The same thing? Yeah.
I don't think it's going to be POD, simply because it has red text, and it's got like a kind of yellowish parchment background, so that's not really conducive unless you do a color copy. And then that's a 400-page color novel, which is pretty ridiculous. I don't know. We'll see. If it is going to be POD, then I guess that's cool. I'm fine with that. But it's just something I want to like bring to people's attention, just so they know.
Yeah. We've got a few new releases as well. Most recently, we've got Goblin Markets for Changeling the Lost. That's on print on demand as well. And of course, we have Strange Dead Love, which we interviewed Philomena Young about, and I've read through that, so I have some highlights to pick out on that one in a bit. What else is there, Mike?
Nothing that I can think of. There might be some new POD stuff. I think I saw like Rage Across Egypt when I checked last. I don't know. They're chugging along basically. And I think that's really it for White Wolf News, to be honest. It's only been a couple weeks, and we've had the holidays, so not much going on over there. And with that, let's move on over to the Secret Frequency.
It's under the stairs. I want my mom.
So, Chris, just before we started the show, you found a pretty sweet article. So, why don't you tell us about that?
Okay, this is a interesting story that occurred around about Christmas, and it's about reports of the sighting of the legendary Oily Man, a monster that terrorizes Malaysia. So, residents of the Kampung district of Melaka in Malaysia were alarmed over reports of the Orang Minyak. I may have pronounced that completely wrong, but hey. And this is Malaya for Oily Man. a strange monster that is said to abduct young women at night, and has been occasionally sighted over the decades, but never captured. According to a reporter, there have been multiple sightings this Christmas, and one eyewitness had reported seeing it crawling up the stairs of the house just like Spider-Man. When it reached the top, it suddenly jumped onto the roof. I don't think a human could do that, and then it just disappeared. This was particularly disturbing as the families that have seen it all have young girls in the house. There are numerous reasons or ideas for what this creature is. Some say it's simply some form of supernatural creature in its own right. Others say it's a human warlock who coats himself with grease that's as black as his soul. The grease not only looks scary, but is disgusting, and it allows him to escape capture, as he can never be fully held on too tightly. Of course, there's never been any reports of anyone having greasy hands when they've captured him, so we can't verify that. So, yeah, the villagers, of course, don't trust the police to protect them, and so we now have citizens patrolling armed with machetes looking for the monster. The Orang Minyak is also one of many similar mythical creatures in the region. There is the Orang Ekor, which is the tailed man, a race of men and women who have tails. The Orang Gadang, the big man, or 10-foot tall beast with long hair, so a yeti-like creature. And the Orang Bati, which is the flying man, a creature that stands about 5 feet tall with black leathery wings, and allegedly makes its home in dormant volcanoes. That's what the Oily Man has been up to recently. He's been scaring people and possibly looking for young women to be his victims. On a final note, according to Michael Newton in his Encyclopedia of Cryptozoology, a global guide, the Orang Minyak is an aggressive unknown hominid or primate reported in the peninsula of Malaysia. Natures in the region claim that this large hairy biped attacks rural villages by night and carries off young women. So it already is known about quite well in cryptozoology books, and of course there are now people out on the streets with machetes trying to hunt down this strange creature. So yeah, what do you think, Mike? What's your initial thoughts on how you would use this in a World of Darkness game?
That's a good question. Well, when it's talking about young girls, that gets me thinking about, like, kinfolk of werewolves, and, how something may be targeting them. And then, of course, there's the old standby of Changeling the Lost. I mean, if it's something, true fae whisking off, children, then bam.
Yeah.
There you go with that. It's a pretty simple one to go with.
It fits in totally, as again, for Changeling the Lost, one of the Darklings, which one is it? Tunnel Grub. It kind of fits with that idea because they can slip through things. Of course, you could go with. I'm trying to think. It's a classic La Sombra from Vampire the Masquerade. The whole thing when the guy said it was kind of like just like Spider-Man, it immediately made me think that actually that's the wrong character to reference from Spider-Man. It's actually more like Carnage. But I would say, of course, for Mage the Awakening, it kind of fits with the idea of making use of the Death Arcana and manipulating shadows. If you want to go down the Promethean line, it's either one of the Centimani, it could even be a Pandoran, or of course you could go down the route of something more like maybe an Uglin, or maybe a Tammuz, or Promethean kind of fits that idea.
Right.
Or of course, if you want to go for the most easy one to apply, it's a spirit-ridden. Someone tainted by shadows, death, oil, or it's a Magath of some combination of spirits that involves oil, of course. If you again keeping with the werewolf route, then it could be a creature that's been born out of the pollution of nearby rivers. Um, ooh, Peter, any ideas?
Well, you guys really, wow, you pretty much covered everything. I was actually thinking, I was actually in Mike's boat right before he spoke. I was thinking, he and I were on the same page. I was definitely thinking, as soon as you mentioned that, I was thinking a conflict with one of the outlying were clans of my city, the proverbial city I'd be playing in the setting, and them having a conflict with one of these entities that spills over into the from the suburbs to the urban areas, and then the local kindred magistrates, whether it's a Cami or Sabat or whatever the case may be, whoever's really in charge of the city, independents, whatnot, have to kind of step in, and then it becomes kind of a three-way conflict.
Hmm.
That was my initial thoughts.
Yeah, the other thing I was thinking is, what is the point of the grease? Like, actually, I think it brings it up in the article. Like, grease would just make it tougher for like the person to break in and grab these people. So it's pretty strange and just
Yeah.
off, basically.
Of course, if you really want to break it down to its most basic, keep it as a cryptid. I mean, if you really want to throw your players a curveball, go with a cryptid. So if a player out there is trying to be really kind of wily and like, oh my vampire is of course is a researcher of the paranormal and so forth and knows everything about anything that I might come across in the game setting, if you're using everything from various different books, then hell, just keep it as a cryptid, and that way they know jack shit about it. That's just because I'm mean.
It's also a good way, as Chris was kind of, I think where he was going with that, was to dealing with metagamers. You know, these people who have every rule, every stat, every NPC memorized. You throw the antagonist of the chronicle as something that isn't in the book, something you've completely made up. Then that, there's kind of no way for them to metagame that.
Well, yeah, that's exactly, I think the key thing there is of using cryptids, and I think we discussed last week with the last show anyway, about the science of evil, is the whole idea that you can inject into your games monsters whose origins really are tied to none of the splats at all, or anything to do with spirits or anything to do with ghosts, and your mage that has spheres or arcana coming out of his ass cannot do anything really directly to it because they don't really know what they're dealing with, and that again just makes the world seem stranger, weirder, scarier. And it's always good just to freshen up games by doing that. I think this is something again we might touch upon when we look at do some kind of a flashback to like a particular set of books, in particular Predators from Werewolf, is that some of those books are really useful. And again, like, oh, of course, what else could this creature be? It could be an intruder from the abyss, or if you want to use the creatures out of the back of Second Sight, which is again kind of more Cthulhuid type entities. Again, so you're putting scary things into the game which aren't tied to any of the particular splats.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Alright, I think that's it for the secret frequency. So from there, let's move on over to the, I guess we'll call it the WAD News segment. Alright, so we've got Peter here tonight, and he went to the Grand Masquerade. We didn't. So, Peter, could you just give us some of your basic, gut reactions to that entire event and some of the cool highlights that you saw?
Okay, well, let me just say, and this is the most important thing, and I think Chris here will appreciate and respect this. New Orleans is awesome because you can walk down the street with your plastic cup of strawberry daiquiri. That is just pretty awesome. And I got to be honest, I was drunk for about half the time. I got to throw that out there. So some of my recollection might be a little on the fuzzy side. Just saying. Now, with all on a serious note, though, it was very, very. I'm not sure if there's really a word in my vocabulary that can really describe it. Interesting doesn't even begin to scratch the surface, but it was quite an experience. Uh, Walking through the French Quarter with what seemed to be hundreds, if not 1,000 plus, of people at this event, all dressed up in character for the most part. As Mike, who went to PAX East with me last year, there were people all dressed up, just walking around about throughout Boston, throughout around the convention center we're at, and it was
Mm-hmm.
kind of like that, but in the vampire context. So it was it was almost surreal. Here I am in one of the oldest existing cities in America. In a very European-looking part of New Orleans, French Quarter, and uh, all of that, and here are all these proverbial kindred-looking people, walking around, socializing, so on and so forth, all throughout the neighborhood. So it was very surreal on that level.
I totally understand what you're saying. Yeah.
So yeah, very very interesting. I met some wonderful wonderful people. It was a great time. Not only uh, to go to these panels, to go to these conferences, to go to one of the pen and paper games or LARP situations. But it was a great time just to meet new people, make some new friendships, make some new acquaintances, doing some networking. Uh, it really was a very, for anyone who wants to, you know, get more involved in, whether it's Vampire the Masquerade or Requiem, whatever the case may be, and just be more involved in the community, meet new people, get new takes on things, have some very interesting shop talk over a cup of cappuccino. This is definitely environment that definitely fosters that, and definitely is probably one of the most powerful and amazing aspects of the Grand Masquerade as a whole. Yes, the LARPing is cool, the pen and paper is cool, the panels are really awesome, but just the interaction with other fans and other like-minded people really is an amazing experience. I gotta say. Now, with that said, yes, I did partake in a little bit of LARPing. I'm a, I'm an old school pen and paper guy. This is my first time LARPing. Not the best first time experience, I gotta say. Certainly wasn't bad, but unfortunately, I went with my senior staff member and assistant administrator for WOGnews.net, Donovan, and my girlfriend Evie. We all went on the second day, and the storyline, however, had progressed, and it was basically just a fallout of the storyline they were LARPing. And so we kind of came into the tail end, and so everything had already, the initial meetings had already taken place, and things that have already happened. Just like a pen and paper session, if you're in a campaign or a chronicle, and you're 2/3 the way through the chronicle, and then a new player jumps in with their character, it's kind of hard to really get into the meat of the situation. So that's unfortunately the wall I was up against. I wasn't there.
Right, right.
I got there late the first day, so I missed the initial setup and meeting everyone and such. Donovan was there. I was not. So I tagged along with him, as I said, the second day, and he said his experience on the first day was very, very different than, unfortunately, what I encountered. But it was still very interesting. I met some interesting people. I certainly don't regret it. It was a very interesting hour. I partook in that. But one thing I will say to anyone who wants to get into LARPing, who hasn't done it much, is it seems from this experience certainly told me it's very, very, very critical to, as I said, just like with a pen and paper session, to really get the full experience, you really gotta start out. It's not something you can just jump into in the middle of an existing storyline or existing chronicle or whatnot, because just like with the pen and paper session, you really missed out a lot, and everyone's has kind of secluded themselves in their own little cliques by that point, and so it's really hard to work your way in there. But nonetheless, but the panels were amazing, which I'm sure we will talk about momentarily, especially the MMO panel. But the panels were interesting. The sessions were really interesting. You get to walk around with your drink down Bourbon Street, all dressed in Victorian Goth attire. So really, what's not to love?
I know that in regarding LARP, back in the 2010, the first Grand Masquerade, they had three really beautiful venues. One for Changeling, one for Vampire, and one for Werewolf. Did they have a similar setup this year, or basically just what'd you see, and was it cool? Like, when they highlights about it?
Yeah, I'll tell you, they actually hired a prop company to come and set up the ballroom slash Prince's Council Chamber rooms. The LARPing I partook in, which was the Vampire the Masquerade, there were, as far as I saw, there was definitely the Vampire, the Masquerade, and the Requiem were the largest. Then there was some werewolf, which they were kind of pushed to the side, and I never really encountered how those were set up per se. I heard they were kind of more like a biker bar kind. That's what I heard. It was kind of a biker bar, or very kind of roughshod kind of bar kind of setup. Where the vampire rooms, there were three main ones. They were very large, flowing drapes, nice plush furniture, so on and so forth. Very elegant. Basically a Toreador's wet dream kind of setting. So I am, and not only having a passing interest in the where, I really didn't go there, so I can't really speak on how that LARPing went. But if you still have access to the itinerary of the events, you'll see that a good 80% was all dedicated to Vampire, either Requiem or Masquerade. They were pretty neck and neck when it came to quantity on that level. Then there was some Werewolf, and honestly, I don't recall anything but Vampire and Werewolf as it pertained to LARPing sessions. Tabletop, yes, there were other things going on. But LARPing, if they did, they even got pushed immediately the farther corner than the Werewolf was. So I don't even really, I can't say I actually seen any other LARPing besides than the Werewolf or the Vampire. And the Vampire was certainly the largest. They had the largest rooms. They had the most people. I mean, the Vampire LARP certainly took front and center stage.
So I guess my next question is, like, who did you high five? Like, what cool people did you run into from White Wolf, or what, like, really cool fans do you recall? Anything like that?
Oh goodness, yeah. I bumped elbows with several people from CCP. Shane Depressed, the former community manager. The Chris M, the senior producer of the MMO. And in passing, like on the elevator and such, I bumped into a few other CCP folk. And as for just cool people, I wouldn't even know where to begin. I can't say I had one. For the most part, I can't really recall one bad personal experience. Just general social interaction I had there. Everyone was friendly. You just walked up to someone, you could just you could end up having a nice 20-minute conversation. Everyone was welcoming. Everyone was warm. Everyone was friendly. There was just, a multitude. But it's kind of hard. Though I will say, the one person that kind of sticks out She was actually a model for the V20 book, and
Hmm.
unfortunately, don't quite have the V20 book right here, and I can't remember her name, but she's on page like 230 something or other. And she actually signed my book for me. Actually, we met after the event at the airport, and we bumped into we actually crossed the paths again. We talked a little bit. She was nice enough to sign. I didn't ask; she volunteered to sign it, and my V20 book on the page she modeled for. But anyway, she was there with her boyfriend, and she was a real sweetheart. And it's funny. I think it's fair to say most people involved in the masquerade, requiem, so on and so forth, probably I'd say the age group for that is probably a bit older than maybe your typical our peer. Uh, probably in the 20s to 30s. I don't know what the exact statistics are White Wolf has, but I assume it's probably a bit older age group. Yet all these models, the female models who were there, it was so, that whole maturity just went out the window, and it was like kids in a candy store. They were. It's like I think these girls heard every pickup line 100 times over. It was, it was. Yeah, I kind of felt a little embarrassed for them a little bit, but it is what it is. It was fun. They took it. At least they tried to take it with a grain of salt as best they could. Smile, thanks but no thanks, I guess, kind of thing. But that aside, though, they were really, really nice people. And as I said, the models who were in the V20 book, most of them were there. They were very forthcoming, and in fact, they got to the point where they constantly had a Sharpie pen with them. So, because people were coming up all the time, can you sign my V20 book? Can you sign? I wish I had $1 every time I saw someone run up to one of the models who was, mingling or at this event or that event, and can you sign my V20 book? So, yeah.
Cool, cool. Chris, you got any questions?
Ooh, I'm just trying to think. Can you tell us more about the actual location, the actual venues themselves? Because I know the hotels and the key locations of the Grand Masquerade were quite specific. And can you just tell us some more about the decor of it? Because were they not like kind of Art Deco and so forth? Just kind of
Yes.
interested in that.
Yeah, the hotels had definitely turn of the century. I'm talking last century.
Yeah.
Turn of the century French influence. Um, which isn't surprising considering the roots of New Orleans. And so even though the hotels weren't quite that old, they definitely had that ambiance. Though a lot of the city is quite old. Some of the buildings, are 100, 200 years, a couple hundred years old. So, uh, but the hotels definitely kept in flavor with the rest of the French Quarter, and I'd say fairly decadent. There were nice hotels. The event was split up between two hotels, and putting aside the group that came in to decorate the LARPing rooms, just putting the LARPing areas aside, just the hotels, the ballrooms where conferences were held, the lobbies where a lot of socializing was going on almost all hours of the day and night. Very nice. Definitely turn of the century French influenced Art Deco-y kind of atmosphere and feel. In fact, in the Hotel Montello where I was at, the bar of the hotel had an old world carousel, and it actually slowly went around in a circle. So actually, while you're at the bar, the bar was round. It was the center of the carousel, and you slowly were going around, so your scenery was always changing.
Wow.
Yeah, it was very cool. Very cool.
And so obviously there were there were of course all the presentations that were going on, and there was the laughing. What other kind of event? Were there any other smaller events going on at the Grand Masquerade that weren't focused on the laughing and focusing on the White Wolf CCP discussions on various games? Whatever. Were there ever smaller things to get involved in?
The big thing that was going on, and because I'm not big into LARPing, you're gonna have to forgive. I don't really know the names of the exact people involved and such, though I did meet them.
Mm-hmm.
The big thing that was going on is CCP, aka White Wolf, was giving the reins of what's a big LARPing, the Camarilla.
Mm.
They signing that because legally they legally took it over because Camarilla trademark, and I guess before White Wolf got taken over by CCP, White Wolf legally went after the LARPing group because they called themselves the Camarilla, which they considered their property, and the judge ruled in favor of White Wolf, so they legally took ownership of that LARPing group.
Mm.
Fast forward, CCP buys them out. CCP's like, this is one of the, one of the PR situations they totally hit a grand slam with. If they did this more often, they probably wouldn't have gotten in the position they did last year. They said, you know what, we are a gaming company. We are a pen and paper company. We are not a LARPing company. Yes. So they actually, through, I guess, over the past few years, worked on giving the Camarilla, they're making an independent entity again, no longer owned by White Wolf / CCP. And the legal document was actually signed at a ceremony there at the Grand Masquerade, where the Camarilla is now once again an independent entity run by essentially like a elected board of directors.
Cool. And the other big thing going on at the Grand Masquerade was, of course, talking about the MMO and really, like, finally giving us some facts about it and all that. So, I guess, Peter, do you want to, like, kind of, since this is your territory, discuss some of the big announcements that they made?
Yeah. A lot. They really went quite specific. It was. Let me just say, technically, the conference was billed at the MMO conference. There was only one, and it was billed as, tell us, what do you want in the MMO? It was essentially just people going to the microphone and saying, telling Chris, who was there, the senior producer of CCP, of the MMO, who works for CCP, and just the original concept was just go there and say, I'd really like this to be in the game, and this is why. And that was really the initial setup of the roundtable. It very, very quickly devolved into, how is this going to work in the game? Is this in the game? That kind of thing. It turned into more a Q&A than it did a request session, which it was originally billed at. So with all that said, and Chris just kind of went with it, and things he couldn't talk about, he just said, I really can't talk about that right now, but the questions he could answer, he did, and this is how all this information came to be. Now, with all that said, come some of the big points, and this is interesting, and a lot of people are taking issue with this. One of the first things they said is that they are going to try to emulate the feel, because they want to have this foster in online role playing, that they're actually trying to emulate the feel of LARPing more so than any other MMO currently in existence. So, some people are taking issue with that, saying, well, I'm not into, what do they want me to do? Run around with my cardboard sword, throwing Nerf, nerfs painted like fireballs. What are they what are they talking about? And I, and because unfortunately, LARPing does bring up some negative connotations, unfortunately. But however, I think all they were trying to do, at least that was my impression sitting there, is all Chris was trying to state is they really want role playing to take a front and center of this MMO more than any other MMO commercial MMO in existence today. And I think that's all he was trying to say is they're trying to emulate the LARPing because they want you to feel, they want you to care for your character, they want you to be invested in your character, and they want you to care about your character, and I think that's really what they were trying to say, and I'm not trying to put words in his mouth. Maybe I could be totally wrong, and yeah, if so, I'm sure it'll come out. But that was my impression of what he meant by that comment.
Yeah, I think what I've kind of like gained from what I've read, and like I guess we'll discuss in a bit, like some of the mechanics that have been kind of suggested that would appear, is that when they say they want the game to mimic the LARP environment rather than other MMOs, is either that the mechanics of the game support the social interaction of the setting, and it's the social interaction of the setting that drives the game and creates the communities and tells you who's in charge and who's the bigwig and who's Prince of the City. Whereas, say, in other games, to become Prince of the City or the equivalent, it's the person that has played the mechanics of the game to get to the top, which is grinding through dungeon upon dungeon and farming however many bloody cabbages out of a place and turn them into an armor of cabbages. Yeah, that's the impression I've got from Vampires, that the mechanics support the social mechanisms that that are in the LARPing environment, and even at the tabletop, to how players get into positions of power and do what they want to do.
No, I definitely agree 110% with your analysis of the comments that were made. I quite frankly can't really add a whole lot to that, except to say, again, to go back to what you said, is several times during this panel, he stressed many times about social interaction and networking and maintaining a loyal group of friends and followers is very important in this game to get anywhere. So yeah. I agree. I think, will grinding have every MMO, you can kill stuff for, money or whatever. That's to some degree going to be in there, but it's certainly the way he talked. Certainly is not going to be the main way to get anywhere. In fact, he even said, and one of the other big bombshells he said, there's going to be many cities of various sizes, and players can work their way up to prince level of authority in the cities. But he said there is no way to kill your way up to that level. It is to get to that level of authority and power. It's all through networking and politics. So
you see, that's stunning to say that. I mean, because you've only just got to extrapolate that you have a person works their way up to be Prince of the City through, making friends and influencing them, and not getting killed because everyone's gaining too much by having this person in power.
Right.
And then going, well, we kind of like what that other city's got. They've got some cool doohickey. That's a plot device kind of, I'm sure they have plot device cool chalices of blood of craziness or whatever. But, there'll be something that you want to grab.
Right.
And you'll want to then try and work out how you can make use of your social network. The Prince of the City uses his social network, or the people in there, to infiltrate another city. And then you've only got to then go down that chain of thought, and then, oh, my bestest bud is now prince of another city and has now turned on me, and then there's a war between cities.
Right.
If
Right.
that happens in the game, if that actually is totally doable, then I'm there 110% with that, because I can certainly say that myself, my wife, and like friends of previous roleplay group friends will be on there. I'm sure at some point we'll all kind of agree that it might be fun for one of us at some point to backstab just to see what the hell happens.
Right. And that's funny you say that, because he also did say, while there will be a general CCP run meta plot that happens throughout the game, the main plots and stories will be player driven. So
Yeah,
that definitely goes into exactly what you say.
cool. Okay. So, yeah, what else was said then?
Well, the other big thing, everyone starts as mortal, and
Woohoo.
it is optional if you wish to become kindred.
Yeah, that's gonna be really interesting because if you build up all this politics within the kindred society, but then you've got like 50% of the player base just being mortal, how is that gonna work? It kind of makes you wonder. Is it going to be a lot of like VTM Bloodlines style quests that the mortals can do, and that kind of stuff, or is there going to be a separate political entity for the mortals to interact with?
That's tough. That's a tough call. I really feel. I think from a game mechanic standpoint, they had to go this route because let's be honest. Knock on wood, it comes out, it's successful. They're gonna want to put some expansions out there. The next
Right,
logical,
right.
just like they're talking W20 now after V20. Most next logical expansion is playable werewolves or were creatures as a whole. And if everyone starts immortal, then as you start adding, were creatures, mages, so on and so forth, then you can take your generic human, mortal avatar and take him in whatever direction you want. You want to take him a mage, go down the mage path. You want to be kindred, go down the vampire path, so on and so forth. So from a game mechanic standpoint, this was almost a no-brainer. They had to do this route because this is the only full, because they were forward thinking, and I give them credit for that. But you're right. But by doing that, that leaves a whole aspect of what a player is going to do if they don't run and find the first vampire to turn them if they choose to stay kindred. So in a way, they've almost doubled the amount of work they need to do. Not only do they need to, make missions and aspects of the kindred, but you got to do almost the same thing, but for mortals, because obviously most realistically speaking, a mortal tries to do a vampire mission. Most putting aside the masquerade and all that stuff, just quite frankly, the mortal's going to get ripped to pieces.
I don't imagine there's going to be missions in the way that we think from other MMOs, because you
Probably
only
not.
have to look at Eve. Does Eve really have missions? I can see that their way of fostering social entities emerging both in the vampire part of the game and the mortal part of the game will revolve around many of the things that they know from Eve. So, you will have something within a city that is the equivalent of the mortal mayor of the city, because they're obviously they've got their network of people they influence, and they've also got the resources that they can harvest by having gotten to that rank. And then the real crazy thing is when you have the vampire, if they even go down this route. I mean, this is just me speculating, but if it's the vampire part being symbiotic with the mortal part, as in the vampires don't get access to certain things that the mortals have, and the only way to do that is by the mechanisms that we know and love in vampire, which are blood bonds and auspex and dominate and so forth, to manipulate the mortals. That'd be really interesting if you could do that. If they go down that route, that'd be amazing. But again, this is just me chucking ideas
Maybe.
out.
Here's kind of what I'm thinking. So with mortal characters, if you're playing as one, you got a couple choices. You could actually work for vampires, and there might be some uses that a vampire has for mortals.
Well, a blood doll.
Lack of frenzy, no dependence on blood. We could see how that works out. But here's the other thing I'm thinking, which could be really cool. If you decide to stay immortal, that means that you could become a hunter and you monkey wrench all the different supernaturals. In effect, if you play as a mortal, you could get to be a griefer, but you don't have any special powers or anything.
I've been thinking that one. Yeah.
That could be pretty interesting, and just to see how that works out, because it's
Right.
like you give that option to people, but they don't get any of the special benefits, which kind of balances it out.
They get to grief, but they don't. But it's not easy to grief. So
Exactly.
yeah, you get to kill, but it ain't going to be easy to kill a bunch of vampires. That's unless you get a bunch of your friends who are also mortals and also griefers that go, let's go slay vampires, and that's hilarious then, because you've got your vampire character going, I've just influenced my friends. The prince of the city's gone here, have some extra blood for the next however many weeks in the game. You've got that resource, and you don't need to go out and harvest it. You've actually got it via a different route, and you go, everything's good. It's a lovely night out. The moon is shining. The blood is running, and then 10 mortals turn up and go, hey buddy, you're a vampire, and we know so because we've watched you for however many weeks, and we know you've got a lot of stuff we can grab. Let's kill you. And be like, shit, where are my friends now? And if that, again, it's one of those things, if they can replicate that, then, a bunch of mortals jumping a vampire, because they've done their research on who they want to jump, then shit, that'll be amazing.
It will. It will. And they've kind of implied that there will be, quote unquote, classes, for lack of a better term, for mortals. So I'd be shocked if they, a vampire hunter or whatnot, kind of equivalent path isn't available to the mortal avatars. I'd be very shocked.
It'll be really nice if they put in the mortal avatars some sort of hedge wizardry, because that'd be really nice to have that in there as a way of, if they could get magic into the system for mortals in a limited way, because then that's obviously the perfect playground to just begin to go, well, there's the thing ready for mage when that ever happens. But that would be also kind of cool to do. But anyway. What else is on the list of things? So we were talking about griefing, because, that's a big one, like a massive mechanic in the game, is, of course, humanity for vampires, and humanity in general.
Yeah, both humanity and generation will be a stat in the game. Now, how it's exactly implemented, they've only scratched the surface, so we don't exactly know the exact logistics and technicalities of it. But we do know those are confirmed stats in the game. And they did say outright that humanity will play as an anti-griefing tool. And one of the examples is if Bob logs in and starts griefing another player, there's a mechanic that he's going to lose humanity, and if his humanity goes down enough, then he will be attackable asylum or no.
That's awesome. Yeah.
So, obviously there's a lot of open questions to that, but as I said, they only really scratched the surface of how these stats and mechanics will work, but it definitely is very intriguing.
Yeah, the implications of that is really big, because again, if you want to go out griefing and you want to do something that's useful for your character, that involves you losing humanity because it involves pissing off other players, that's the time when you want to have your friends about you, because suddenly you're an open target, because everyone can then attack you. You need people that have got who can defend you as well. So again, that all reinforces the idea that the social network is, you know, runs with these mechanics feeding back into it, into how people then further interact. Um, I hope, as a prince of the city, though, you'll be allowed to call blood hunts on people. Of course, if you do it too much, your humanity will go down.
Yeah, I imagine there's going. He didn't. No one, as far as I recall, or any of my notes, no one really talked about blood hunts really like directly. And I don't recall them saying. I don't have any notes or ever recall reading or hearing them say anything about that. So, but one has to assume if you've achieved that level of authority in one of the cities in the game world, there has to be some kind of blood hunt mechanic. I'd be very shocked if
Mm,
it wasn't. Like you said, I'm sure there'll be limitations and stipulations and such, but that aside, if not, then obviously, the, the that'd just be way out of whack for a prince, and a prince would just have way too much, send a blood hunt to anyone who, any person who looks at him the wrong way, But yeah, it's definitely interesting. I'd be very, very shocked if there wasn't some sort of blood hunt mechanic. Speaking of mechanics, one other thing that saddens some people, there will be no day-night cycle. It will be persistently nighttime in the game world. And getting back to blood hunts and such, they also said that um, no no one will always be 100% safe no matter where you are. Now, how that exactly works, and for example, a safe zone, a Elysium, whatever, asylum, or whatever the case may be, who knows? But they basically said no one will always be 100% safe. Now, you could probably interpret the word safe a couple different ways, but I just found that interesting.
mm.
Yeah, it kind of makes me wonder how they're going to implement that exactly. Just running it over in my head, you of course have like physical attacks, but you also have to kind of wonder about how if there's going to be social attacks or social combat in this, or if they're all just going to leave it up to text-based discussions in the game. Yeah,
Yeah,
interesting.
there's
Interesting.
different, because obviously, as you say, there are different ways of attacking someone. I mean, there's the physical sense, and you may well be in Elysium, but going back to the idea of people playing Mortals forming bands of hunters, are they going to be would a bunch of hunters, if they did the appropriate actions within the game that allowed them to do it, would they be able to gate crash a gathering of vampires in Elysium and go, aha, suckers, and take out people? Or and with the non-direct attacks, that you've got to consider how would you go about replicating the classic I'm a vampire who has influence in city planning, I'm going to have your haven torn down by, you've got all those things which yeah, again, it'd be interesting to see how they can work those into the game, because those are classic ways of shit going wrong with your character.
There is. There
Right,
is.
right. Yeah, and that's the other cool thing, Chris. They're gonna actually have havens in the game that your
Yeah,
character can get. You can like decorate them, or whatever. And I'm I'm a little leery of this, but apparently anything goes in your haven, basically.
yeah.
That's what he said. Because someone asked him, it was concerned, and I think justifiably so, that they didn't want this to become like the Second Life vampire shards, where sometimes you have a naked goth avatar, which with a 10 times size of the avatar's penis running around, or just crazy, obviously
Uh,
immersion breaking situations. And Chris responded, said that while there will be nudity in the game and avatars can get nude, that will be limited to public areas, implying, I guess, maybe you can't get the impression. Of course, this is just me guesstimating, but My impression is that means you can't strip down more to than your bra and panties or boxers or whatever the case may be. Um,
Hmm.
that's kind of the impression I got. But he said in Havens, anything goes, which means to me there, nudity, whatever is it's all fun and games. So that was the impression I was left when he talked about Havens.
Yeah, speaking of which, so if you're playing as immortals and you want to grief a vampire in an alley, just get one of your buddies to strip down and streak down Main Street and attract all the police away. It's going to be a huge tactic.
That you see, that would be interesting. Of course, going back to the whole mortal being represented in the game and forming their societies. I mean, will you have players be able to take up jobs as police officers? I mean, and getting your police officer gets reports whenever a person nearby, a mortal nearby, gets hurt, maimed, fed upon, and you'll have the chance to go along and deal with whatever's there. Again, the opportunities that you could get through some of these social groups that can be built within the game would be it'd be great to see. I'd love, because again, it'd be great to see a bunch of to be a bunch of mortals. You've got a group of players that have formed the police force within that city, and then slowly to see them totally corrupted by the bunch of vampires because they want power over the police force.
Right.
Maybe. What I think you're probably going to have happen with occupations is that since you don't have the day-night cycle, characters just get to select their occupation, and that affects their resource stat.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
Speaking of stats, Chris also did say that the in-game character sheet is very similar to the Vampire the Masquerade V20 character sheet. So he didn't say it was identical or exact. He said it's very. I believe that if I recall, his exact quote was very similar. So I think we are going to see a pretty decent translation of the pen and paper stats and to the MMO.
Yeah, I believe it, because the Bloodlines video game basically used the Vampire
Yeah.
Masquerade character
Right.
sheet. So,
Right. Very successfully, I might add.
indeed, yeah.
My only concern, quite honestly, I have with that is they're probably going to have to increase the dots from 5 to probably 10 or 10, 12, maybe 20, because quite frankly, if they keep it at a 5, the progression will be so unbearably snail-paced slow that I interest will wane. Progression should be slow, but you got to, even if the dot, if you increase it at 10, make again each 2 dots equal 1 dot equivalent to the old system. But even if you just do the half, the a dot really only equals half of real dots, mechanics wise, it at least gives the player a sense of accomplishment. You know what I'm saying? You gotta have a little bit of, oh, hey, I just earned a dot and I can put it somewhere. Because if you have so few and far, because with only 5 in stats and skills, the dots are going to be so few and far. Either it's one of two things. Either the only way to compensate that is either to have very fast progression, which then basically mean to have all these maxed out vampires 2 weeks after the game launches, or it's so unbearably slow, a lot of people are going to lose interest because they don't feel they're doing all this work and they're not getting anywhere.
But then, I mean, it depends. Progression is something relative. Obviously, it depends whether you consider progression to be the progression of your character with their stats and their powers and their resources, or if you consider progression to be, I'm in charge, motherfuckers. I don't care if I've only got the strength 1. I've got an army. You've got jack or die. So progression can be progression is it depends upon what you see as what's progress. So
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's definitely many ways that this can be done, but I mean,
mhm.
just off the top of my head, that's my biggest concern. And I think that's why he said it's very similar. He didn't say it's identical. He didn't say it's going to work exact. He just said it's very similar. So so definitely, I think we're gonna probably all the core stats are going to be there, the core skills, so on and so forth. Generation, and as we mentioned earlier, uh, you know, uh, generation and humanity are confirmed stats as well. So it definitely is going to have a flavor of, the masquerade. But they definitely got to tweak it to being 24/7 MMO.
I
Gotcha.
was just looking at the things that you updated on things from Grand Masquerade. Can you tell us a bit more about this Cerberus, the software that they're
Yeah,
developing?
he basically said there's this third-party software package called Cerberus, and what it can do is when in the chat text online, it can auto translate that
Ah,
to other clients that are set for a different language.
cool.
So he said there were 5 languages that will ship. He didn't specify what those were, but he said one has to assume Spanish, French, you know, um, the big ones.
Yeah.
I'm just assuming. But German probably, assuming they could get past the ratings board,
Mm,
which I have a hard time believing this game will if they keep true. But did Bloodlines make it past the Germans?
No idea.
Because that'd be a good.
I'll find out.
Because um, if it had issues, then this MMO probably has no chance of getting into Germany. If they did, then I'd say it's probably on the fence because this is probably going to be a lot more edgier than Bloodlines. I mean, he outright said there's going to be nudity in the game where Bloodlines didn't.
Hmm.
You know, so it kind of makes you
And
wonder because
the
German.
German
Well,
censorship of games is kind of questionable anyway. It's like whether you can have games that are violent and quite violent and have certain content. It's the question of the agency of the player. So, for instance, Saints Row Third isn't out in Germany, simply because you as a player have a character who you then command other players, no, not other players, other characters to commit crimes and so forth. So, whereas, you can quite happily play Assassin's Creed over here, where you do the same thing, but it's historical violence, and
right.
obviously you're not a criminal. So, I think Vampire may not have a problem because of the fact that it is more, even though it is maybe has adult themes, it's grounded in fantasy.
Right. Right. I, I see. Australia is getting almost as bad as Germany, though, aren't they? I've been hearing a lot
Um,
that they have this
yeah,
board that's really like coming down on video game violence, sexuality, and I heard Australia's becoming really. They might be taking the crown from the Germans.
yeah.
But certainly, I'm sure that's a river they'll cross when they come to it. I suppose they're a bit of ways away from worrying about that. But the other thing I really wanted to mention, not to get sidetracked, get back on track here, uh, as we always tend to do. They at the Grand Masquerade, they said Diablerie is under serious discussion, and then shortly after the Grand Masquerade, Chris was quoted as saying, "quote I would absolutely say that Diablerie is part of the game now." End quote.
Wow.
So that's in. That's another confirmed feature in the game.
Cool.
Interesting. Yeah, you really have to look at the emergent behavior with that and make sure that you're sending the right message to players. Because if it's a mainly social game and you put in this mechanic to give you more power by just killing people, that's pretty dangerous.
But then you've got to feed you. This is the whole thing, though. I think that that's interesting with the development of World Darkness Online is the feedback is what the game mechanics do is they allow feedback loops into the social network of the game. So if someone starts diablerizing, their humanity's going to go down to the point that they're then it's open season on them. So at which point people can take them out. But if they've diablerized, but they've been kind of cunning in how they've been going about doing that, and they're keeping their humanity high, then maybe in order to get revenge on them, players are going to have to go, friends of their now dead vampire friends are going to have to go through the social, through the correct channels in the social networks and environments that emerge in the game in order to get the prince to go, you're going to die because you diabolized and we have proof, so forth, so forth. So I think that's it'll be interesting to see if that is what happens, is that the mechanics help foster the emergent social dynamics that are inherent to the games of vampire and werewolf and mage and so forth.
Whoa. All right, so I think we've discussed enough about the MMO. Do you have any closing comments on it?
There was something I was going to ask. Damn, I can't think. It may have been related to something in the show notes. Hold on, let me have a look. There's something on my mind. Otherwise, no.
One thing I thought was very interesting, just to throw that out there, Chris pretty said it without saying it, that consensual PvP fighting until the final death will probably be in the game.
Sweet.
And I just thought that was really cool. I mean, I don't know who's worked, put like months into their character or even a year or two, wants to risk potential final death. But and for the listeners, I should say, final death has been confirmed in the game. How it exactly will work, again, they've only kind of scratched the surface of explaining it. But both mortals and kindred can have final death in this game, which means you can totally lose all your work, everything with your character.
Awesome.
Gotcha. Interesting. So I think that's really it with the MMO, and I guess we really just want to ask Peter, kind of like what he thinks about what's been going on with White Wolf lately. Anything about like the V20 and all that, and basically where he sees White Wolf and CCP going in the future, and just a little bit of everything, I guess.
Well, V20, I think an amazing book, amazing compilation. It actually has revitalized my interest in the pen and paper game. It's never really been gone, but the cleaning up of the rules and the everything in one tome. I don't want to call it a book. It is literally a tome. If anyone's seen it, it's 500 something pages, almost 600, something like that. It's crazy. It's huge. But I think it's an amazing book. I'm starting a new pen and paper game with it, and I definitely see this really bringing in, or at least assisting with another generation of hopefully young people interested in role playing to get into the vampire, because I really do see it as a great doorway, a great step, especially with it on print on demand. I know there's still some issues with that. I've heard back and forth. I don't have to worry about it, but I know there's still some issues with print on demand with it. But it is, but you can buy the PDF version. And it's just really an amazing book, and I commend them. I think they did a wonderful job with it. People can nitpick all the artwork. You always have these people who nitpick this and that, but as a whole, I think its intent and its purpose, they hit it out of the park with that. As for White Wolf, I have my concerns. If I didn't believe this MMO was going to come to fruition, I certainly wouldn't be putting all my time and effort into my website. But I do, and I'm usually on the pro optimism wagon when it comes to White Wolf and specifically the MMO. However, with the recent cuts they've had, you know, White Wolf lost 20% of their staff. Most of them that were working on the MMO, and then another chunk of them, of those developers, that survived the 20% cut. A bunch of them got moved over to Eve. How many are left working on it? According to Chris, he still has a team, a fairly decent team. He's posting progress reports from time to time. Just a few weeks ago, he stated the team was working on a Z-axis. The exact example he gave is having avatars jump rooftop to rooftop. And then he goes out, and then he said after that, we are going to be working on the combat system. So clearly, he has animators, he has graphic artists, he has engine programmers, so on and so forth. So clearly, he has some amount of team. How much? I don't, that's speculation, but he definitely has a team enough to, make progress on the game. But I really have my concerns with the leadership of CCP. They made, we could spend a whole show on just the missteps they made last year, PR missteps. That's a show in itself, I think, if you guys ever wanted to tackle that. So I won't go into that, but it was a really unfortunate situation, a situation they created, a self-inflicted wound, if you will. But I think at this point they're doing the best they can to recoup and move forward. But in all honesty, they have no one to blame but themselves for stretching themselves out way too thin. And I really felt Dust was total waste. They should have been just had Eve and been working on the MMO. They just stretched themselves too thin, and then they caught themselves without enough money. Essentially it comes down to money. Their subs was dipping. They had too many projects going on. There's, simple accounting 101. Too much money going out, not enough coming in. They had to do something. I understand that, but nonetheless, while I definitely have my concerns, I definitely do think in the end the MMO is going to come out. Probably it's going to be several more years. But Chris did promise us the last Grand Masquerade, and reiterated that to me in an email this last week, that we will be getting some more definitive, solid information, and many people are interpreting that as media. He didn't say that, but that's how some people are interpreting it as this year. And I'm assuming either at PAX or E3, or at the latest, the next Grand Masquerade, but I don't think, from a PR standpoint, they can afford to wait that long.
And to be fair, we really should point out that while PR might not be good on CCP side with like Eve, they've been doing a really good job for the World of Darkness MMO, like Shane DeFriest and Chris McDonough, getting the information out there, like with the Grand Masquerade and all that, and really getting people informed and excited. And that's why we're able to talk about all this stuff.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I've known Shane for many, many years. He's a great guy. I'm saddened that, unfortunately, he was one of the 20% who got cut from White Wolf. And Chris, I met him face to face at the Grand Masquerade. We've had many very nice email exchanges. He's a great guy. I feel very confident him at the helm. With all this turmoil, if there was anyone else as the executive producer, senior producer of this game, I would have many more doubts and many more worries than I do with Chris at the helm. I think Chris is going to weather this. I think he's going to pull this out. Probably not in the time frame he wanted, probably not in the way he wanted, but it's going. I have virtually no doubt he's going to make this happen, and I give him a tremendous amount of credit and kudos, as do Shane and the rest of the, Eddie Webb and all these other folks over at White Wolf. I think they're doing the best they can with this current adversity, and it's just weathering the storm. But I think they will pull it out. I just want my main concern is CCP, which pays the bills, as long as they get back on track and refocus and get their priorities straight.
Absolutely. All right, and with that, I think that's all we've got to say, really. Peter, would you like to tell people where they can reach you if they have any questions about the MMO and like what you've been finding out? Because you've personally got like some really good summaries of the information up on your website and all that.
Oh, absolutely. You can go to my website, World of Darkness News, at wodnews.net. If you wish to contact me, you can email me at admin, A-D-M-I-N, at wodnews.net. Or feel free to just register an account, pop in my forums. I check the site several times a day, myself and my staff. So feel free to pop by. We're more than happy to build up a positive MMO community, and many people from White Wolf, including Chris, pop by on a regular basis. So suggestions and ideas are definitely being read.
Very cool. And I think that's pretty much it for this episode. If anyone wants to reach Darker Days Radio, our email is darkerdaysradio@gmail.com. Our Twitter account is Darker Days Radio on Twitter. And, of course, if you want to reach Peter on Twitter, it's WOD_news, if I remember correctly.
That is correct.
Yes. And you can definitely contact us that way.
And of course, there's Facebook, where I've been panhandling for ideas of people for blog posts and stuff we can discuss on the show. So we've had some nice ideas from there, but more, just tell us what you want to hear. And I'll write about it, or we'll talk about it at some point.
Very cool. All right, Peter, I really want to thank you for coming on the show and sharing your experience and knowledge with us.
Oh, well, thank you both to you and Chris. I really appreciate coming on here, guys. It's always a pleasure talking to you. And again, Happy New Year to you and all your listeners.
That's
Thank
been
you very much.
really great. Thank you.
And Chris, I want to thank you for staying up until 4 in the morning, I believe.
Yeah.
That is a feat of strength right there.
Yeah, it's so guten Morgen to everyone right now. Yeah, I will be getting some sleep and then heading straight to brunch. I think I may start my day with pancakes and Bucks Fizz when I get to the cafe in the morning. Right. Anyway.
All right,
And
great.
Mike, I'm going to see you at PAX.
Oh, yeah, that's right. You said you're going to be running a V20 game there. I'm pretty excited about that.
Yes, we're going to have. I'm going to on Saturday, and if it needs to, run over to Sunday. We're going to run a V20 game on Saturday, probably starting around noonish, at one of the empty tables. And I know Mike and a couple other people expressed interest. I'm looking for a max of 4 players. So if anyone is interested, feel free to get in touch with me, and if there's any room, we'll definitely throw you in an empty slot. And also, Mike and I, aka Lost Heretic, will be video blogging from the floor just like we did last year. So I'm really looking forward to that, because it was many people really responded positively to our previews on the floor at PAX East. So I'm definitely looking forward to doing some more blogging with you this time around, Mike.
All right, outstanding. Yep, that's it for this episode. So, so long, everyone, and Good night.
Yeah, morning.